us that people do get the chance to talk directly to the club. So thank you for your participation. We can't start tonight's evening without first mentioning the heartbreaking tragedy that befell our club a week ago. Amelia Atman passed away playing for our academy. The club lost a fabulous talent, and we lost a fellow yellow and a big part of our community. Results and performances occupy so much of our time, but this was a horrible reminder that it's the people we share this amazing club with that make it what it is. Our hearts go out to the parents, teammates and friends in their time of unimaginable grief. We would like to thank the club for the impeccable way that they have dealt with this tragedy so far, and indeed Blackburn and the wider footballing community for showing us once again that there is a wider football family. Before we continue, a quick safety message from the stadium team to remind you that if there is a fire alarm, it's not a test, it's an alarm. There is a fire door, safety door at the back, and we can go through the entrance where you came in, and there is a rally point with a green sign kind of over there in the car park, which we'll direct you to. Also, a quick reminder that if you are here in the car and you haven't put your registration in the machine at the front desk, you often do it now, it's quite expensive if you don't. Whilst mentioning the stadium, I'd like to thank Michael and his team for once again helping us to host this event. His help is very much appreciated. We'd also like to take the opportunity to thank Grant, Tim, Anthony, Adam, Ryan and Amy, and all of the team at the club for giving us their time and for making this forum possible. A big thank you also to Nathan, who's once again stepped up to help us host the event. Nathan, you're a star, and thank you from all of us. A big thank you also to Jerome, Ross and Alex from CVP Oxford, who helped behind the scenes to make sure you could all hear. Finally, a big personal thank you from myself to Ali, Trevor, Ben and the whole of the OxVox team who have worked really hard to put on this event. For some of us, our time at OxVox is coming to an end, but we have new members and a new committee that will be stepping forward to take on the reins. But we ask any of you who are interested in running the club and who have time and energy, contact OxVox, get involved. You know, there's always the chance for new people to come in, and it really does help for us to run the organisation. Now it's time to hand over to Nathan, and he will open up, I believe, with some questions to the club. We will then go on to your questions. I can come up, if you put your hand up, I can come with the microphone, and you can ask any questions as you see fit. So in front of you we have Chairman Grant Ferguson, we have CEO Tim Williams, and we have Financial Director Anthony Massey to take your questions. Nathan, over to you.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, everyone. I think it's been made quite clear tonight. It's a forum on finance, not formations, on stadiums, not strikers, and spreadsheets, not substitutions. But before that, ordinary statements, usually from Tim or from Grant. But we're going to start tonight. We've decided we can have like a mini forum in a forum, just for 5 minutes, like a 5 minutes fans forum, you could call it. It's a good idea, that. Write that down for me in the future. Tim, it's been a really busy few weeks, and Paul mentioned the tragedy that came off the back of an upturn of fortune, of results, and a real feel-good to then have that happen at the football club. How do moments like that shape the values and sense of unity around this football club?
I think, can you hear me all right? Is that okay? I think as Paul very eloquently said, if I can maybe do that as well, it makes you realise that there is a world beyond football. There is a world where football is not the most important thing that we do, and it's very easy to get wrapped up in our own lives, our own jobs, our own worries, and realise that there are people out there who are dealing with the most unimaginable tragedy, and any of us who are parents or grandparents, you know, we can only begin to imagine a shred of what Amelia's family must be feeling right now, and my own heart and condolences still go to them. I think of Amelia and her family every single day, and it's something which has made me realise that within our club we have got some truly extraordinary people, both within the club as staff and also in the wider hinterland of the club, and including the people in this room. Notwithstanding the incredible work that was done by the first responders on that day, the heart and soul that was poured out from our club and from the supporters on that day at Blackburn was truly inspirational. We continue to offer our support to those of us around the club who continue to need it. We will continue to offer that support and be there for the family and be there for all the people who were around that day. But it's only when the worst possible thing happens that you see the best of people, and we saw really the best of people over that weekend and the subsequent days.
And to stick with a community feel, you were in this room a couple of days ago with Will Vaux, part of the Can We Talk campaign. How important are those initiatives to the football club, and how proud are you of what the club is doing away from the field from that point of view? Well,
again, Nathan, I think it's that sense of immense pride. I mean, I sat here, only a couple of days ago and was literally brimming with pride. We mentioned Ryan here, and Ryan and Will have really pioneered the Can We Talk campaign, and Will working with Baton of Hope to achieve just incredible things. And we hear this through Debbie Cook of the Community Trust and through the work of Jem and the team on Oxford United in the community, that the work that we can do outside of what happens on the pitch every Saturday not just changes lives but actually saves lives. And statistically, evidentially, empirically, the work that the community does and the work that campaigns like Can We Talk and Baton of Hope does actually make a difference. And the reality is that we've got the most incredible platform to actually do this. We've got 11,500 people in our stadium every weekend. You think of the 6 degrees of separation of 11,500 people and how many people they can actually reach out to and spread that word about we can talk, we should talk, we will talk. And I always say this, and I don't say this in an any light way, because I talk about little Oxford United, but my God, we are big, and we can really achieve big things doing things like this. And it shows, and again, I keep saying this, that there is a world beyond what 11 guys do on a pitch every Saturday, and we really do it. We take full advantage of that, as we should, and as every other one of the 92 clubs in our league should do.
We're going to come on a course to Stadium and Finance this evening, but can you round up for those that haven't heard today? We've had the accounts out for the previous year. Can you sort of summarise that, put it into context, and does it show in particular realities and opportunities that exist for playing at this higher level of Football League?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually going to pass on to Anthony in a few moments, but if I could round up what it means in a few pithy words, it's really expensive to be in the Championship. And I want to first thank kind of Grant and the shareholders for their ongoing incredible hard work and support to this brilliant club and what we've achieved over the last few years. But these accounts and the press release we put out today is a stark reminder that competing at the top level of English football, and we are at tier 2, but pretty much at the top level of English football, is exceptionally expensive. And Anthony and I spent a couple of days with the EFL, other finance directors and chief execs of EFL clubs only a couple of weeks ago, and we all say the same thing. It's really expensive to be competitive. Now, I've said for many, many years that being competitive is about choosing the right players, it's about having the right structures, it's about doing what you do on the pitch, but being competitive is also about how much you invest on and off the pitch, and that investment has been immense, and it has to be immense. It's amazing that we have increased our revenue by some 11 million pounds this year, which is a result of us playing in the second tier rather than in the third tier. But with that comes immense cost. From day one, the costs of running this club just went from kind of here to here. and that's in terms of having the playing staff, having the structures behind it, even putting new floodlights and goal line technology in here. That all takes cash, it takes money that the shareholders have to support. But there's an awful lot that's said over the last few days about the sustainability or otherwise of English football, and it would be wrong for me to sit here and say that there isn't a problem in English professional football from top to bottom. And there are some really, really smart people in rooms, outside of here that are still cogitating over how to make that work. And I was in a room today in London trying to help how to make that work going forward. And there are no easy answers. And unfortunately, where people are demanding that football clubs spend a lot of money, football clubs will spend a lot of money. Now, the counter to that is we're very lucky to have supportive shareholders who have allowed us to spend that money. But it's an ongoing issue, and I'm not going to shy away from that. And I'm going to just pass on to Anthony to go through a few more details, and he will probably say something similar to me. But it's tough out there.
It's echo everything Tim said. The press release that went out today, if you could summarise it in one kind of paragraph, I think it's we're playing football in a higher division. As a result, revenues went up, costs went up more, and we're not alone in that. That's pretty universal through football. And we are fortunate enough to have owners that want the club to be successful. So they continue supporting both operationally in terms of running the club and spending the money to develop the opportunity to build a new stadium. And I think the theme that comes through the numbers point to that. I'm not really sure what else to say.
I think there is one aspect which is important to note, and that is that one of the unfortunate consequences of the huge amounts of money that are being spent in English football is that there are some clubs out there who are taking decisions to either not invest off the pitch. We're not doing that. Who are taking decisions to not invest in their youth academy. We are not doing that. And are taking the terrible decision to not invest in their women's teams, and we are not doing that. So whilst the money is clearly significant, I can assure you and everybody in this room that we are spending money in the right way as well, and I think that's something that is really important that we say in front of everybody here.
I think what's different is our shareholders are investing into a plan rather than just investing to keep the club afloat. It's apparent to everybody. You don't make money by investing in a football club to get dividends out of the P&L account. You make money by executing a plan, increasing the value of the club to shareholders, to supporters. If you have a plan to get there, you have a reason to invest. If you're simply investing to keep the status quo going, then the real danger is that it becomes good money after bad. But, as Tim said, we are partly into executing a plan that we're very clear as to where we want to be and what will create that value for shareholders. Creating value for shareholders, we've said this before, creates value for everybody. It's not mutually exclusive. If the shareholder have created value, it means the club is in a far better place. Supporters, staff, the community at large is in a better place. So I think that's what I would say that where we differentiate. And we're not the only club to be like that, but we're not. There are some clubs that you do question how they would justifying sustaining the level of losses that they're incurring, because trust me, by far, the types of losses that we're reporting today are not the worst in the league by any stretch of the imagination.
We'll come back, I'm sure, to more about the facts and figures as we go through. Two very good questions to end the first part of this evening. Tim, 8 massive games, let's go on the pitch very quickly on the horizon. What's the feeling inside the club going into the run-in now?
I think it's an amazing feeling inside the club, actually, and I think the last few weeks with, and this was a really interesting one because our kind of joy was slightly tempered by the events of a couple of weeks ago, but to have gone, to get 10 points out of 12 was an absolutely remarkable achievement. I think, look, we may have been having slightly different conversations this evening had we not got 10 points out of 12, given some of the results that happened over the past couple of weeks. There is an enormous amount of enthusiasm around the place. There's a huge amount of belief. The players you can see it. The players have got real fire in their bellies at the moment. You can see how disappointed they were coming off the pitch last weekend after conceding the late penalty, when I think we genuinely felt we deserved to win that game. But look, 10 out of 12 is good. Let's get 10 out of 12 for the next 4, and I think we are then motoring. But there is a great feeling about what the next few weeks is going to bring. There is genuine optimism. This isn't something where we're sitting here going, chins on the floor, dragging around, going, oh God, it's terrible. No, we believe that we can do this.
And Grant, just to move that on, how would you sum up the club's position right now in terms of the immediate challenges that face you in the next foreseeable future, and that of the long-term direction?
I take it you mean the club's position as a whole, as opposed to where the men's first team currently sit. But I actually echo what Tim says on the men's first team. I had dinner with Matt last night. He's very confident, and his confidence is based on the attitude in the dressing room. I met with some of the senior players during the week as well. They are determined as ever, as much of any group of players I've seen in the 4 years I've been involved now. So we're staying in the Championship. We've just made it difficult for ourselves. We're going to go do it the hard way, but we're staying in the Championship. I've decided.
There is actually just one more thing, which is, I think, genuinely a cause for some celebration in the club as well, which is, and particularly with the challenges coming forward in terms of the new stadium and what that means for us. We are exceptionally lucky to have hired a real kind of heavy hitter in the stadium development scene from a Premier League club. So, Amy McKenzie, if you would just like to stand up and take your bow. Welcome to Oxford United, Amy.
In terms of the position of the club as a whole, which I said I was going to talk about, not the men's first team position, I actually am very happy with. We've now continually made progress now for getting on for 4 years. Obviously, being in the Championship is a massive progression, and we are going to do every bit as we possibly can to stay there. But you look around the club, we've got a women's team ladies team that's now performing better than we've ever had before. We've left it a bit late in the season for this season, but we're now, Liam Gilbert having coming back, the atmosphere around that part of the building is outstanding. We have a roadmap now in place to be in WSL 2 season after next. And trust me, that takes a lot of investment and a lot of commitment. It's not just winning the league. There's a massive application process and requirements that you have to fill to even get admitted to WSL 2. But we have that plan in place. Likewise, the academy is producing like it's never produced before. We've got 3 or 4 guys around the perimeter of the first team. A couple of those are likely to make breakthroughs in the next year. Some of them are still a bit young, but we definitely see them as being potential, either playing for us or playing for somebody else. But the productivity coming out of the academy is higher than it's been in certainly the last 10 years or so, I would say. And that's all on the sporting. And likewise, we have a very clear path set out now to get the academy from a Cat 3 to a Cat 2. That again requires some very significant investment in the training ground. We have to have an artificial field. We have to have a covered area, dome type area. But we have seen plans this last week, in fact, as how we're going to get there over the next 18 months. So we will have an academy in Cat 2. We will have the women in WSL 2. We will have the men continuing to play in the Championship, and then that's only on the front office. I mean, that's only on the playing side. When we go behind the scenes, we've recruited people like Amy. We've got Nick Meese, who's the head of medical, who've come from higher levels of football. That we've convinced that we have a story to tell and that they have a career to build with us. The commercial side with Adam, producing partnerships and relationships and value that we've never experienced before. So the story, as I say, we were executing towards a plan, and the plan is very much intact, and we've been executing against it well, I think.
So that's an overall as to where the club is right now going forward. We're getting to the supporters part of the evening now, and your questions are more than welcome. We're going to start with one that's coming from several people ahead of tonight, which I think takes care of a very good point to start the evening, and that is the Friends of Stratfield break. Pete and Kathy among those who sent questions in, talking about the amount raised so far by that group and appeals they'll go for a JR, judicial review. Does the club feel confident the stadium will be built, or this will affect the future? And if so, you must have factored in what happens if it doesn't go ahead. Gentlemen.
Which doesn't go ahead?
If the stadium doesn't go ahead.
I have not contemplated the stadium not going ahead. We've always contemplated the idea of there being a JR. It's always highly unlikely they wouldn't at least try it. Because we're amongst friends, I'll beg people's indulgence, and we're not going to. It's only just come out there. We were anticipating it. We don't know all the facts of it. I think General District Council were going to be making their response today, but we're ahead of the curve. We have very, very senior lawyers lined up. General District Council have very, very senior lawyers lined up. They are both sets of lawyers, including King's Councils, are very confident in our position. So we are ready for it. But I'm not going to talk about specific legal strategies because that would be not sensible. But not unexpected, but it'll be dealt with.
So off the back of that, Andy says, can you tell us when do you take over the triangle and when do we see construction start?
There are people on site at the moment as we speak. What they call the ground surveys has started. We actually can't, and that is with a dispensation from Oxfordshire County Council, because we have, if you remember, what we were actually granted when we got the land was an option to take on the lease, subject to planning permission. Now, we've now obviously got the planning permission, but there was a sub-condition that says we can't actually exercise until the possibility of a judicial review has been completely extinguished. So Oxfordshire County Council have been excellent, and they're more than happy for us to start the groundworks, the investigations, and those are important because they feed into the tender process for the main contractor, because they need to know what's underneath, what they're dealing with, and those requests for proposals to the main contractor are due to go out by the middle of next month. So, it's full steam ahead as far as we're concerned.
If you've got stadium-based questions, and please get involved at this point, do raise your hand. We've got more that have been sent in too, but very keen for anybody in the room that wants to ask about the stadium to do so. Andrew's done that in advance as well. I beg your pardon. Jason, this is Jason Morris, Desmond's son, for those who know Desmond Morris. 3 questions, he says, so we'll try and break this down for you. What is the current estimated total cost of the stadium for the whole lot, he says? This is everything, the fees, the hotel, the council commitments, etc. So do you want to take it one by one? That's question 1. Can you put a
million by million?
It's more than, I think 150 million was a fairly public number. That was number that was put together 4 years ago now, so it's obviously more than that. We're probably in the region of between 160 and 170 million.
Yep. And he goes on to say, how are you going to finance the project?
I'll take that one. I think we've said this before, it'll be a mix of debt and equity. What's very interesting is that we had a meeting earlier this week where there are 3 institutions who are extremely excited about the prospect of building a stadium on the Triangle. I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but we've now sent sort of a fairly extensive document out to potential investors. They have responded very, very positively, almost to the point of going, right, we'll pretty much give you sort of a heads of terms here. So we are kind of getting at that stage now with this, and that's a real positive.
That's on the debt side.
Correct. Yeah.
So his sort of hat-trick of questions was about that, and says, will the finance all be in shape of debt owned by the club entirely? was what he was
So
getting at.
say that again.
Will the debt lie with the club? Was
It
what he was
will.
getting at.
It will lie within a structure that will be within the perimeter of the club. Yes.
He did have a fourth point as well. He said three, made one more. Are there any timelines and plans that you can share at this point? But I think sort of touched on the fact
I think we've covered that. I think.
Anybody with a question in the front there, Paul? Thank you.
Sorry, just for clarity.
That's fine.
Just for clarity, did you say there is going to be a judicial review, or did you say they've raised the funds?
So what happens is when the planning permission was finally granted after the 106 was agreed to, we get the planning certificate. And that starts a clock running 6 weeks, in which anybody, for any reason, can actually ask for a judicial review. By asking for it doesn't mean you get it, but it allows you to go to a court and say, here's why I believe the process that has been conducted is incomplete or is at fault. They're not supposed to be challenging the substance of it, it's the process that has been followed. It's up to a court then to decide whether there is any merit to what is being raised. And that's exactly where we're at the moment.
Thank you.
And that's not a cheap process, is it? That
No,
relies
at
on
all.
the friends raising their own money to do that,
Yeah, that is correct.
which they've done by the look of it.
Yeah.
Well, they've raised some money. Let's leave it to
Apparently
that.
so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else more on the stadium? It's been a big talking point for a while. So, yes, sir. Thank you.
What sort of timeline? Yeah, what sort of timeline? 6 weeks up, they put JR, and you know you're going to be on the last minute, they're trying to Mrs. Clower. Judge then, of course, will look at this and decide whether they should go ahead with JR. I argue it might be, because it looks like everything's been followed to the level of the law,
Yep.
CPC. But sort of length of time after JR's presented, if they've asked for it, the judge looks at it and says, no, we'll throw it out. Can we get in the ground and start with the spades?
So we're in that, this is, again, you need to give me some indulgence here because I don't want to start talking about legal strategy. We're in that phase. We will see, I think, in the next couple of days what Cherwell District Council's response is going to be, but we're pretty sure it's going to be aligned with our own. And then the key thing is how they respond to that and what their council is telling them. At that point, there are different avenues we can take that have got different lengths of time, and that's when we will make that sort of decision, when we really understand what the merits of the case are, or lack thereof, and how a court is therefore likely to respond to it. But we are, so we think we are pretty comfortable we are ahead of the curve. We've talked to council. It's a council that we worked with all through the planning process, so they know exactly what has gone on. And the King's Council that we're using is one of the leading King's Councils who's dealt with JRs and planning applications before. So in that regard, we've done as much as we can until we know what their response is going to be.
Back of the room, as well, again. Gentleman's hand at the back.
So this is probably a question for Amy, which is a bit unfair really on the first week, but obviously as fans we're very, very keen to get involved in different work streams when a stadium is being developed, like transport, catering, the fan experience, etc. So when might that start? And maybe, Amy, what were your experiences at Fulham working with fans, which you could bring talks about?
Good, Amy.
Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I obviously did work closely with the FAB and different work streams at Fulham, alongside my COO at the time and CEO. You know, I do value the opinions of the fans, and that will be carried forward, you know, for the new stadium build. On timelines of when that would happen, I can't say at the minute. I'm only currently on day 3. So but it will happen. We're just currently in the process of working out, various different work streams, internal and external at the minute. So I just can't say, unfortunately. But yes, it will happen.
Welcome to Oxford United, Amy. Thank you for taking the question. One or two also asking about sort of more detailed stadium plans in terms of the look. We have images, we have plans that we've all looked at, but people want to know a bit more about how will it look internally, sort of online walkthroughs. Is there anything that forthcoming sooner rather than later that can show us more of a feel of what the stadium will look like?
I think the reality on this is, wow, that was a bit loud, wasn't it? The reality on this is that I think what we've got to do is get through the next few weeks. And I think, I know Grant's begged a lot of indulgence, and I'm going to do the same, is, there is a staggering amount of work going on behind the scenes at the moment. Amy and Adam are already, deeply involved in orderly huddles discussing what, the commercial aspects and the design of the stadium is going to look like. And I think it's kind of slightly premature to be kind of going around and saying, well, can we see that right now? I think what we need to do is get through the next few weeks, get a little bit more certainty over the overall plans that we have. I think what we will then do is, once we get clarity on timelines and once we get clarity on the kind of overall project, I think what we probably end up doing is using this room to kind of show some visuals, show some walkthroughs, get a little bit more colour around what it actually is that we're doing. But I think begging indulgence yet again, I think just give us a few more weeks just to get our kind of ducks in a row in terms of where we're going with this. So.
I think the other part, Tim, is the plans. There are plans, obviously, and they've all been costed and they look amazing, but nothing has gone to tender yet. And so things can change. We've been warned that things can change quite dramatically when the tender comes back, both from a cost perspective and from a creative and design perspective, once the actual contractors see as opposed to the sort of designers. So I think once we've done that, that's when it would be appropriate to showcase.
But critically, what we designed is what we got planning permission for, so it's going to be unlikely we will deviate from that.
The exterior will look like what the graphics are. It's the internals that are more likely to change.
We're not going to go full.
The exterior is not going to change.
We're not going to go full Man United and build a theme park. Don't worry.
Any more stadium questions in the room? Yes, sir.
Shall I do it without a mic?
Go on, shout. Yeah.
Okay. Just touching on what you said there. Okay, is that better? Touching on what you said there, Grant, about the tender period and so on. So if we hedge our bets and presume all is well in the world and we don't end up in an empty JR, so in a few weeks' time that berth is cleared. I presume at that point we're safe to go out to tenders and main contractors. Probably that's typically 6-week period or something? Or for a project like this, might it be longer?
We don't actually need to not go out to contractors. That's a judgment call we'll need to make with shareholders. Yeah. If we're supremely confident, there is no reason we can't continue with the process. Yeah. And that's why I'm saying we're in this point at the moment just without complete knowledge as to what the likely outcome is. The whole process would be essentially if the what they call the ITT, the final version of the request for proposal, goes out mid-April. There's about a 4-month evaluation process and then a contracting process. So the idea would be the main contractor on site early next year, probably as early as January or February next year, and that allows sufficient time for the physical build.
That was the ultimate question.
Yeah,
that was where I was leading.
That's the big picture timeline.
Yeah, and you're pretty confident that 18 months is long enough.
Well, I mean, we don't shy away from the fact that a JR could disrupt that. Yeah. But in the absence of that, then the timeline to get us into the stadium for the start of 28-29 is absolutely doable.
Yeah.
Just to finish this point today, one of the things I sort of heard and read is that a lot of the contractors that used to be involved in this sort of work, and that it's probably overseas contractors. I'm not going to hold you to anything, but is that...
No, I mean, I'm not going to say whether they're overseas or not. We will have 3 contractors who have asked to be issued with the RFP, and that's for a build this size, having 3 contractors keen on it is perfectly acceptable.
Okay, that's great.
And all 3 of those are experienced stadium contractors.
Right, thanks.
We've had a lengthy questioning on the stadium. I'll paraphrase, it's a very long statement about what the club get in terms of revenue from that stadium. This is Justin, who says, I've not seen or heard anything about the plans yet. The current deal left the football club in a difficult place, and I paraphrase his language. Can you tell us what the club will gain sort of financially from a match-day experience and a more day-to-day basis?
Well, I think it goes without saying that the overall match-day experience will be slightly better. It would be, look, joking apart, I've actually got some numbers here from 23-24, and I've got a couple of clubs here who have got pretty substantial stadia. So I'm not going to kind of talk about what revenues we will be earning. That's being modelled out at the moment. We've got a good idea it will be kind of significant, kind of double-digit million profits extra over and above where we are now. But just to give you a couple of comparators, so back in 23-24, when Oxford United had revenues, as we mentioned earlier, about 8.4 million, Bolton Wanderers had revenues of 18.3 million, Derby County had revenues of 19.4 million. That is pretty much entirely down to the fact that they have got large stadiums with hotels or arenas that they control themselves. So we are talking about considerable increases in revenue, profitability and overall sustainability from building this new stadium, which is exactly why this is so important for us.
Can you sort of elaborate on percentage-wise, better expression, how that might look in terms of what the club can take straight away for themselves?
Well, I mean, I think it's look, we could go into a huge sort of long debate, whatever you want to call it, about, you know, future financial controls in football, financial fair play in football. What I can say is that, you know, our revenues this year, as you've seen, for 24-25 around 19 million quid. It'll probably be not dissimilar for 25-26. I'm looking comfortably that we're going to be kind of at the sort of 35 to 36, 37 million mark for that year when we move into the new stadium. If you want me to draw me on a number, it might even be more. And that's
not paying rent makes a large difference, doesn't it? Straight
well,
away.
it does, but also
the point I was going to make
that
is the revenue is one side. We have to be honest with ourselves here. The stadium needs to be paid for. So you have to pay for it before you get the ultimate rewards. We will take on debt. Shareholders will put in money. Shareholders look for return on their money, and debt service costs have to be met. So while we will create a lot more revenue, we will create a lot more cash flow. In the short term, that needs to be paid for,
Yep.
and then the net gain after it's been paid for accrues to the football club. But that's just normal. It's like we take on your house mortgage. It's no different.
Stadium questions still to come? Yes. Thank you. We go right there. Paul's on his way.
This has taken a while to get here, to get the stadium this far. And we've got a couple of years to build it. I've seen enough grand designs to know that delays happen, acts of God, and then that can happen. Is there a contingency, a plan B, if we aren't in the stadium in time for the 2028-29 season?
yes. Yes. I mean, we have a plan B and a plan C and a plan D, but you know, I think it's imprudent to really consider that, because what we're actually not doing at the moment is considering the need for a plan B, C or D. But yes, believe me, we think about this.
Next. Stadium-wise, we can move on to other aspects of the financial situation of the club and budgets, etc. We happy to move on stadium-wise? Anybody else? Anything else that the panel would like to say?
I think that's fairly extensive. But actually, I appreciate the interest. It's good that people understand how fundamentally important it is to the club, and we appreciate the support that we've had all the way through this process.
Yeah.
The support from the fans and the wider community has been fundamental, and it's getting us this far. And I think it will continue to be that gets us over the line with these hand grenades that people continue to insist on throwing at us. But we will get there if we stick together.
Agreed.
Moving on to some budget questions. We've been talking about the playing staff, but not in terms of results. A few people have been talking about the summer transfer window. One question has said about 2 signings very early on, permanent signings with the Kassam and Brody Spencer, and then no more permanent signings for quite a spell after that. They've asked why. Is that an easy question to answer?
Transfer wish lists at the start of the transfer window are a bit like kids at Christmas time. You can want as much as you can try and want as much as you think you can possibly handle. Actually executing it as a club of our size is extremely difficult. So I actually think what we do in the transfer window, the quality of players we get, is actually above and beyond where we actually are as a club. We need to convince every player that we are interested in, we need to convince to join us, which is actually very satisfying because it means we've sold the story to them. They buy into the story, they buy into the dream. But for every player, I don't think there's ever been a player we've been after who somebody else is not after as well. If we were, you'd be questioning why that was the case. So we did have a strategy the last time. These 2 particular ones were ones that we were very, very keen on. We had well in advance before the window actually started, and we executed quickly. There were some others that came up that we were very, very close on, and we were let down at the last minute, and those type of things happen. And then inevitably you get towards the end of the window. It's late when the Premier League releases its loanees, so that's always a last minute type thing. And I don't actually think that will ever change. Until you're a market setter at the top end of the Premier League, then otherwise you're fighting for what you're looking for in the window.
And let's not forget that the transfer window closes after the season has started. And when the season starts, you get a good idea about what that squad looks like, and maybe you make some tweaks and amends then, maybe you get some injuries that you didn't foresee. So there is, as Grant said, often kind of a flurry at the start of the window, which I think shows the exceptional planning that the recruitment team does, but also we have to be exceptionally reactive during that period of time to ensure that we finish the transfer window in the best possible shape, given what's happened during that kind of period of time when we started playing again.
Invariably, when we start a window, we're clear on the positions we want to fill. There will be at least 5 or 6 names associated with that one position, because you cannot take the risk that you're going to get the one guy who's at the top of your list. Some of those might be loans, some of those might be buys, some of those might be frees. And it's a mixture. What we are very focused on trying to do now is when we buy younger, with the ability to create value. It's easy to say that, because if you get a young 19, 20, 21-year-old who's capable of competing in the Championship, then you can be sure there's another 5 or 6 clubs after them as well. But that's what the intention is.
Touched on the next question, actually. Andrew asks, between 2016 and 2021, Oxford recruited and sold players for fees totaling over £15 million. In the 5 years since, despite paying several club transfer record fees out, we've made almost nothing from player trading. He says the recruitment strategy seems unaligned. Some players, the choice of the manager, some of the recruitment, some of the owner. How do you plan to better align the club's recruitment strategy and provide a better return on the owner's considerable investment?
I think it's a very interesting question, and it's something that, certainly when I joined the club, I looked at and thought, what's the transfer record been like over the previous few years? What we don't want to do is necessarily get into kind of the whys and wherefores why that happened, but one could easily argue that you sold the family silver off in 2021 and didn't create any value going forward. And I think there is a risk that clubs actually do that and capitalise on selling players kind of quite quickly and then not properly reinvest. What I can say that we've done over the past few years is probably been a little bit lumpy given the promotion to the Championship, where you've got to kind of slightly kind of tweak your, well, more than tweak your overall transfer strategy. But with the players that we bought over the past probably 4 or 5 transfer windows, as Grant said, as we've seen that average age of our squad start to reduce, you know, you're not going to see that value being created overnight. You are going to have something of a dip because of, you know, perhaps some of the lack of investment that happened prior to the new ownership coming in. So I think we're in a position now where what we're likely to see is that kind of strategy start to reap rewards. Now, what we've then got to do as a club is decide whether we are actually going to capitalise and sell them, you know, summer 2026, summer 2027, or we actually start to keep them for a little longer and try and kind of get that peak value coming out. So, you know, it's, and with the greatest respect to that question, it is very simplistic to look at that and look at the absolute numbers. But actually, when you're trying to build a squad over time and create value over time, it's kind of not as simple as just kind of selling what you've got.
With due respect, I think it's a fundamentally flawed question. I mean, it's quite simple. If we'd sold Cam Branning and Tyler Goodrun and Kieran Brown, we would not be in the Championship. So you can't have it both ways. What we are doing now, because the squad, that was a sort of older, Tyler aside, but I mean, obviously the age had begun to creep up. Now what we are trying to do is reset that, bring down the average age, and by doing that you're bringing in, both from the academy and from purchases, bringing in a younger player that hopefully you get to the point where what you're offered, despite us trying to build for the future, you get offered something that you'd be silly to say no about.
And that outlay...
But again, the timing of that is critical to getting the balance right between progressing yourself and making short-term gains.
Yeah.
And that outlay to get those young players you talked about, we've seen some of the sort of numbers quoted for you, people like Donnelly, Makoso, even if you want to take that as a permanent deal. Yep. That is not small change for a club like Oxford United.
The price tags get bigger and bigger.
But unfortunately, it is relatively small change for the general average of the Championship. And I think this is where, you know, it's really important that we do start to kind of find the hidden gems, and that's exactly what Ed and his team do. You know, I think, you know, players like Brian de Keersmaker, albeit the injury coming up that's happened over the past few months, is a perfect example of that. Jack Curry is another great example. Stan Mills, need I go on? You know, we've got some great examples of some really good young talent coming through.
We're actually adding somebody to Ed's team, Ed Waldron's team, that will specifically focus on young emerging talent, both to get into the higher ends of our academy under 21 system, but with a view that if that's where they go initially, it's something that has the potential to develop into the first team.
There is a slight follow-on to that question, Nathan, which is that we got that in 2021 and then we nearly got relegated to League Two in 22-23.
Don't mention that. Don't mention that.
You know, but, you know...
But sorry, Grant, you said somebody coming in, a new recruit based purely to look at that particular...
Within Ed's team, but their focus will be just on the young players.
Do you have any budgetary-based sort of questions, transfer policy, while we're on that? We've got a couple. Paul, look lively. Second row.
I'm not turning into Sarge. Is he doing that?
Indeed he is.
I only have two.
Very quiet tonight.
Subjects. It was mentioned in the PR piece on the club accounts that the loss on the 25 year doesn't put us outside of profit and sustainability rules. I mean, as I understand it, I think as the Championship is 40.5 million over 3 years.
No,
over 3 years. No. So could you just expand on how we're within it and what we have to be within?
So principally, over a 3-year period, clubs are allowed to accumulate losses based on their statutory reported financial statements of up to £39 million. But it is not as simple as adding up your losses over 3 years, because there are a number of add-backs that are allowed, which mean that for the 24-25 year upon which this is reported, and Anthony can explain further if needs be, we are comfortably within the parameters set by that 39 million cumulative loss level.
It's still 39, I thought it
39.
No.
40 and a half.
But that in itself, to me, we were talking about this the other day, the fact that that test is called a profitability and sustainability test, is you're allowed to make losses, it's just a measure of where football is, unfortunately.
Sure.
It's why things need to change.
Yeah. But infrastructure and so on can be added back in, I presume.
Move on. Deeply debated. Anthony?
Depreciation of your assets can be added back.
Intangibles and tangibles.
No, you should have tangible assets. Or not,
Yeah, you can't have back your players.
You can't have back your players, the amortisation. After that, it's all the things that they try to promote in football, youth community, women's football, and we said trying to move from Cat 3 to Cat 2, we invest quite heavily. We invest, we're a Category 3 academy, we already invest at the level of a Category 2 academy, which allows us to add quite a bit back in that P&S calculation, which puts us comfortably inside it on these numbers and the next year as well.
So on the positive note that we stay up, as we're going to, and we have another year in the Championship, we've got 25-26 accounts loss, which I don't know, who bloody knows? I mean, you probably do.
Oh, we do. We've got a fair idea.
Just based on player expenditure and so on, a reasonable amount of expect it's going to be in the ballpark or possibly higher, but even that wouldn't set any bells ringing for the following year.
No.
No, we have to update forecasts and things to the league, and with that, the start of the month and what we submitted is compliant with the league.
I think to the semi-layman, the interesting thing is it's not just a straightforward extrapolation of losses.
No, unfortunately it's not.
No, but at this particular time it's more complicated. Tim's in a far better place to explain, but the whole basis of which it's measured in the Championship is being currently debated.
Yeah. Okay, I'll sit down now.
Thanks, Colin.
Well, before takes the mic across for the next question, can I just ask, we often hear the old phrase, people say, a player in the squad, pay him off, get rid. Those outlays also go into this, don't they? You can't do that separately, that eats into what you can spend on players.
Correct, Nathan, yeah.
Without getting down to personalities as such, and focusing on the budgetary and transfer side of things and management of player assets, at the end of last year, one of our forward players, I understand, was given a new contract, but from a fan's point of view, I'm not sure that it seems worth it, after last season. So, are you able to explain why we invested that money in that forward player?
Are
you playing guess who?
You don't have to give me a name.
Look, what you've got on this panel, Grant's probably the best scholar of the game of football on this. Actually, Anthony, I'm probably the worst. So, but I'll take this and go through this. I think the decision to retain or otherwise a player goes a lot further than literally how many goals they score or how many goals they don't score. I think there is, I'll speak very, very highly of Mark as an individual. There is a reason why he continually gets picked for the Wales squad. He's a player of real high standing in our dressing room and a player of real high quality. Whether or not that results in goal scoring, I think if you see his kind of off the ball performance, I actually think Mark is a very valuable asset in our dressing room. And I think, but that goes sort of more widely for a lot of players. So I think, I will sort of explain, there are certain players where you may think, why the hell have they kept that on? There was a guy, we had a great guy a couple of years ago, Josh McEachran. And he stayed on for a year when he didn't actually play a whole heap of games during that season. But the impact that he had in the dressing room and the kind of enthusiasm and the fact that he was kind of a shoulder to cry on, somebody who was really rallying the dressing room, was incredibly important. So I totally hear what you're saying, and I think from the outside looking in, often you may think, why do they do that? But the kind of the dynamics and subtleties of what actually happens in a dressing room is it's a bit of a dark art, and I certainly don't profess to understand it, but I see it happening.
So now I didn't realise we were talking about Sparky, but now that I do, I think the test is quite easy. And the time I've been involved, Sparky's played under 3 managers, and not one of them has wanted to get rid of Sparky.
Yeah.
You also have to consider the cost to replace.
Mm-hmm.
You call that cost to replace was also.
Yeah, it's a good point,
sorry,
Anthony.
sorry to
No,
bring
it's a
the
great
numbers
point.
in. It's all right saying get rid of a player, but you have to.
And when it comes to centre forwards, the ability to replace, because
Yeah.
getting
Yeah, they are
centre
not
forwards
cheap.
is hard.
So, a tested player in the club is less of a risk when you have to outlay money from someone that you bring in cold.
Sure. I mean, it's just interesting in the management of the asset, if you like.
Yeah.
No, it's a good point. I mean,
Yeah,
these things
absolutely.
are talked about and discussed, and some people fall on the other side of it, where they are a good personality and they're a nice person to have around, but they're just what they are delivering at that point in time. It's why we would pick up players, out of competitors. Because you've been released by a club doesn't mean you're a bad player. It just means you're not fitting with the system of that manager at that particular time. But every single transfer that we do, every single contract renewal has got a lot of thought goes into it, I can guarantee you that.
And interestingly here, I think Gary and I think Matt has said it as well, that sometimes the squad is a little top heavy, there's too many senior pros, but there has to be space for the players that you're talking about as well within that makeup, which makes that squad balancing.
So it's the balance, yeah, absolutely, it's the balance. We are top heavy at the moment in terms of numbers and the age profile, and that actually partly sorts itself out with some legacy contracts that come up this summer. So it's distinctly possible that our wage bill could be slightly less next year by trimming that squad and having it on a more focused basis. It won't be a lot different, unfortunately, but as the age profile moves down and some senior players whose contract expires, then there will be a sort of natural reset.
I think you talked about having, getting players in how hard it can be. If you had to sometimes perhaps give an extra year to get a player in, and perhaps when you get to this stage and you say, well, now we've got the legacy contract, but at the time, that was a deal you had to do to get those players in that situation. Is that fair?
It can happen. We try and limit that to it being on an option basis as opposed to making it a longer term contract, and we've been fairly successful at that. But yeah, for sure that can happen. A player that you really need a particular season, you would ideally might just take for a year. They then have the bargaining chip, so it ends up being 2 years because you need them in that year. So there's a lot of ramifications and iterations that go on.
Squad budgetary questions still open to those that haven't asked? Sarge, welcome. We've been expecting you.
Grant earlier mentioned about academy and what we're producing, which is great. How long before we are going to be Cat 2? Isn't it just all-weather service that's needed or something along those lines?
Well, it's easy to say that's all we need. It takes about £2.5 to £3 million to put in that all-weather surface, and not just the all-weather surface. You have to have a 90 by 50 training dome. Mm-hmm. So just a couple of days ago, we saw plans for it that have been drawn up. It looks amazing. We might have to do it in phases, but the first priority would be the all-weather surface, because as a club we need that irrespective of Cat 2.
City Council, they do still sort of jointly do it with the club, don't they? Or is it solely Oxford United?
Solely Oxford United.
Yeah. I was just going to suggest tap them up.
Chance would be a fine.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Chance would be a fine thing.
You're right. It would be great.
Just part of the same question with part 2. The older academy players, the under 21s or the under 23s, is there any likelihood they're going to be playing competitive games in the near future as under 23s or under 21s? There are leagues, there are competitions. It's worth putting them on, wouldn't it?
So we have an under 21 team now that's actually doing very well. It's won most of they play in a competitive league and they've won most of their games.
What, the under 21?
Under 21. And then we've got ones that are barely under 21s playing in those games who have actually been around the first team. People like Leo Snowden, Louis Griffiths. We've got more like Jack Lee coming through.
Yeah.
I think Jack will be an excellent player in his day. So no, actually it's very encouraging what's happening in the academy at the moment.
Thanks.
Just on the academy, listening to Chris Davis, the former OxVox chair, who's also sent quite a lengthy question in for you. He says, I've contacted the club on several occasions about the lack of information in news stories of the club's website, particularly about the young players. He says, for example, we were told last spring 4 players were offered first-time professional contracts. Only one of those, Aaron Lacey, was reported to have signed it, but other players still seem to be here. What's happening here, and why can't we find out what's going on with these young players? I paraphrased him in this question.
Take it away. I actually see a lot of coverage about the academy. They've got their separate social feeds, and I keep up with a lot of it with phone books on their own social feeds. But if it's a concern, we'll pass it through to the academy team. But
We'll take a look.
They're certainly like blowing the trumpet because they are doing very well. There's the Leo, Louis, Jack, and Mosanga, and a couple of others who are still young but are being identified as having that potential headroom.
Of course, it's slightly harder now, isn't it, to break into Oxford United as a championship club than it would have been at League 1 or League 2 level for the players. They've got to be even better.
It is, but when I'm saying they're in and about the squad, they're in and about a championship squad, so that's the basis on which they're being evaluated. So they wouldn't be there if they weren't. If there was somebody who were bringing along to sell on to somebody else, because once they have a professional contract, we are able to sell them for real value.
We have a wonderful app on our phones where we can scroll through all our under-18s and academy players. I would recommend downloading the app because there's a hell of a lot of information on there. So
We're still on budgets right now? Yeah, we have.
I'd like to ask a question about this.
Hang on, sir.
One of the things I've noticed over the last few years is I've got the app, and a lot of stuff is put on not on Facebook, on X. A lot of people don't have X. Now I paid the £5 for the privilege of having the extra on the app, but I had to go onto a Bolton Wanderers site to watch Bolton play Oxford United under 21s. There's so little information on our app about our under 21s. They played all season. There's been no coverage of matches, hardly at all. There's been no reports. We don't get a report straight away about our first team. When Chris Williams was doing the games, we were straight on. First 5 minutes after the game, we had a report. We often have to wait now some time for the report to come online. Now, I'm not criticising the app because it is a good app and there's lots of good stuff on there, but there are lots of things which need to improve, I think. And we need to have more wider stuff on it because that's the only way we're going to learn about the under 21s or the under 18s.
One thing what we're not going to do is answer that. We can't answer that question here because obviously we need to go back and discuss with Academy, with the commercial media team on that. What I can highly recommend is that we sort of take that through a fan advisory board and we kind of bring that up at the next fan advisory board as a specific thing that we need to just have a question about. Well, it's the same. Commercial media communications. It's the same. It's all part of the same thing.
So yes, send any comments in to the fan advisory board. Our contact details are on the fan advisory board page on the club website, and we can make sure those questions.
But can you not take that back to the media now? I mean, can you not take that back to the media from this forward?
I will speak to Adam Benson tomorrow morning.
Some of it here, actually, from a conceptual perspective, I'm right with you because X I am not a fan of at all. And one of the ideas behind us having our own app was to gradually move people away from the other social media sites to use our own app. Yeah. But that doesn't happen overnight, and there are still many thousands of people using not so much Facebook anymore, but X and Insta are still many thousands of people on those. But there's no reason why we shouldn't be aspiring to have as much information on our own app as you can find in those. And that is the aspiration. We need to get there.
There are definite issues with kind of streaming of games, and genuinely, you know, games don't get videoed and filmed and streamed for free. And and again, we talk about a lot of here financial sustainability and making sure we're not kind of throwing good money after bad. And I completely sympathise with perhaps having to go to a Bolton Wanderers website. I mean, nobody wants to do that, Anthony. And having to go to a Bolton Wanderers website to look and stream a match. But there are sometimes specific reasons why that might be the case, and it might be that somebody else has kind of doing it as a paid for on their website, or the costs of production are just so high that it's just not frankly worth us doing it for the number of people who may watch it. We have to make sure that we are doing it in a really kind of cost conscious way. I hear what you're saying there. I'll speak to Adam in the morning and we'll discuss that further and come back to we'll probably come back via the Fan Advisory Bill, because I think that's the right place to do it, but your points are noted.
Anyone else? Academies, apps, X? We've got a few more if not, so we can move on. Steve. Oh, there is a question, sorry. Yes, Paul.
I was just going to ask a little follow-up on the Cat 2. I know we've got the all-weather pitch and the dome to take into consideration. I was going to ask, are there any, in the way we do our training and the way are there any other provisos that need to be met? Also, do you have any rough timetable on that? And if we do have a facility like an all-weather pitch with a dome, are we able to monetize that afterwards? Are we able to use that as money creating?
So as Anthony already mentioned, Paul, there are levels that you need to as well as having the infrastructure, there are financial amounts you need to spend, which then gets matched by the Premier League as their support of the academy structure. We are already spending at the levels, and we're audited, so they know that. In our audit reports, in terms of the technical provisioning, the health and safety, the safeguarding, the education, and all the other things that's going to an academy are all at that level where you would tick the boxes for Cat 2. Literally the only thing we need now is the infrastructure. We're probably looking at that with the best will in the world to start putting that in place by the end of this year, early next year, with the aspiration of being in Cat 2 for the season after next. Is realistic.
We've had one come in during the last discussion about contracts, actually, about Matt Bloomfield, and Ashley has asked if you can tell us if it's a permanent deal, the length of the deal, or is it a rolling contract? Can you shed any light, says Ashley?
I'm always reluctant actually to discuss any details of, for example, I wouldn't discuss, Anthony's contract or, Adam Benson's contract, and I think it's slightly unfair just because somebody's a head coach of a football team that their contract gets discussed in an open forum. So if you don't mind, I prefer not to.
Ashley, we've asked you a question, thank you. Richard is talking about empty seats in the South Stand lower with 8 big games to come on, so not all at home. He's talking about those home games. Is it best to reduce the price to get those seats filled rather than leave them empty, bearing in mind we need everyone back in the team in these games?
Who's going to take that one? I think we're all three of us taking a breath to speak.
It's a bit of a conundrum because pretty much for every game, we are, in terms of seats that have been paid for, we're pretty much sold out in every game. The only ones that, on the average, that are not sold out are the travelling support. People choose not to turn up, I guess, when the results are not going so well. We have set up the exchange, which we'd like to see getting used a lot more. And it is used, it's just not used as much as it could be. And you're right, it'd be great to have a bum on every seat, as they say, and you need to try and work to help that happen. But in terms of them being paid for, most seats for every game have been bought.
Do you think that the early kickoffs, and while the Sky money is great, some of those 12:30 home game kickoffs, people have other things on Saturday morning, people might play, they have sons and daughters who play on a Saturday morning, and maybe some of those seats are often left unfilled, perhaps because people have other things to do on a Saturday.
I don't think we saw it so much early in the season, though. I think it's more a function of when you're not winning, interest. I don't think it applies to anyone in this room, but I mean, everyone, there is different degrees of commitment, and it's easier to make that commitment when the team's winning and when the excitement at the beginning of the season, and then we're not supposed to get into football, but essentially the bottom line is why we are where we are is a lack of consistency. And the fans got to experience that and weren't sure what they were turning up to see. And then it becomes a bit of a toil at the lower end of the league, then I think that there is an element, it's not a huge number, but there is an element of people whose interest just fades away. If we could get them all back and fill every seat for these last games, it would be hugely important.
I think one thing across football, non-attending season ticket holders runs across football 10 to 15% because people have things to do, night matches, that type of thing. That's just an industry kind of average, and I think we run below that normally. But different kick-off times cause different things for different people, but I don't think it's worth seeing out of step. I think if anything is so far during my time here, we run below those kind of industry averages.
How can you increase? You talk about the ticket swap. What more can you do you think? What are you working with anything to try and solve that going forward?
Win more games.
Stay in the championship. It's happening. So that's fine, right? Easy done. On the championship, Steve Merritt says the recent expansion of the championship playoffs. How did the club vote? What were the reasons for the stance taken? And should we as supporters been consulted via OxVox or the fan advisory board before deciding on how to vote?
We voted in favour of expanding the championship playoff places from 6th place to 8th place. 22 out of 24 clubs voted in favour, 2 abstained, there were no votes against. In terms of whether we expand this out to fan advisory board, there are certain decisions that the club has to take and the executives in the club have to take which are in the best interests, we feel, of the club, and also, frankly, not just of the club but of the league. We are a member of the EFL, we are a member of the EFL Championship, and those discussions started very, very late last year, and were discussions which were, frankly, pretty much embargoed before the overall vote was taken. So, there are certain matters which I think are right to go through fan advisory board or supporters. I think there are other matters which I think you have to trust us to do the right thing for the club and the right thing for the league as a whole. There were, and I'm going to add to this, there were some criticisms that I saw in the press about the overall expansion of the league to 8 places, and the common theme I saw was, it's just the money. Believe me, it's not the money, because as we've experienced going through the playoffs a couple of seasons ago, it's not a great money maker. It actually costs you money to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
The key thing is about giving access to non-parachute clubs the opportunity to actually make a charge into the Premier League. There are loads and loads of arguments for it, a number of arguments against it, but the Championship overwhelmingly voted in favour of it, and nobody voted against.
I think you have to appreciate as well, it's not somebody sticks their hands up and says, let's decide to have a quick vote as to whether we expand from 6 to 8. There is a lot of discussion, analysis, debate goes into that. A lot of it is, as Tim says, is embargoed because it relates to confidential information from within the EFL and from within other clubs. It's just not sensible or practical that you would share that beyond on a needs-to-know basis. There may be other things that come up that would make it a perfect sense, and that we'd have those discussions with the fan advisory board if it's directly impacting fans. But things like that, the EFL, frankly, I don't think would be appreciative of us taking to the fan advisory board.
No.
We've probably got around 10 minutes or so, I think, for questions. We've gone through most of them that came in. Many of them were very similar to appreciate in terms of their content and the direction. But now's a chance where we've got the gentleman in the room. If you've got it from earlier on, you want to go back to stadium-wise and take back to the club, please. Paul, we've got 1 or 2 hands up at this stage. We'll finish up some questions. Gentleman on the 4th row back, but now it's 5th row. Now is certainly the time to get this question in while we've got the team available.
Yes, thank you. Indonesia pre-season tour. I think it's fair to say that the manager at the time wasn't a great fan of it. Is that something you're entertaining again in the future? And if so, might you do it a bit differently this time?
I think with the Indonesian pre-season tour, it was an extraordinary opportunity for the team to go and showcase themselves in a competition led over in Indonesia. Brilliant opportunity for the players to do something that, frankly, a team of our sort of size would probably not get to do. It wasn't perfect, and I don't think anybody would argue that it wasn't perfect. I think if we were to do it again, we would probably look to do it slightly differently, maybe fewer games. Will it be happening this summer? No, it will not, and there are a variety of reasons why that is, but no, it may happen in the future. I can't say for certain, but we'd probably do it slightly differently.
Good evening. It's probably quite flippant, but now the time has gone to ask about when we'll build the 4th stand. Probably have to have another similar question. My question would be, with all the importance of the last few away games, and I understand the commercial relevance of away kits, etc., etc., I'd like to know if it's possible for the club to try as much as we possibly can to wear a yellow shirt in all of the remaining away games. It makes a great deal of difference for me, certainly. I don't know why, it's probably stupid, but it makes sense. It feels good. It makes sense for me and my friends. We feel better. So I don't know if you can do anything about it, but as I say, could we try?
I can try.
I mean, I think that
the easy answer, the players much prefer playing the yellow kit as well, and that goes without saying. There are commitments to the manufacturer and our partner on the kits who are very, very good. We've had an excellent.
Can we just do our best?
We can do our best for sure. Point taken.
That's to stay up, not just wear the yellow kit, by the way. So we just do our best. That's what they want. Anybody else on financial, stadiums, on-field matters? Because now is the time to ask. Thank you.
If we stay up, I'll wear a yellow kit.
I thought the academy this year was fantastic. 3,500 supporters for under 18.
Yeah, super.
Fantastic. Man United couldn't emulate that in the next round. So well done for that. Thank you for the support you give our great club. Just talking about money making and segregation in the North Stand, we talked about it on the previous fans forum. We lose about 750 seats, is it, because of segregation?
Yep.
You know, if we hopefully be in the championship next year, wouldn't it be viable to put a screen down there, even if it's Perspex and metal or something, and use those seats? It's a lot of money.
You're asking about it every year. Every year, for the fourth year I've been here, and I hate it.
The unfortunate fact is that it's not about what is on top, it's about what's underneath. And whilst we may be able to appropriately and adequately segregate on the seated areas, it's in the concourses where it's very, very difficult to segregate, and therefore it becomes an issue of real serious health and safety. So, as Grant says, every single person who comes into this club goes, "But the bloody seg line, get rid of it." We have tried. There are potential things that we could
primarily
look at.
the ingress and egress underneath,
and it's stopping away supporters and home supporters kind of coalescing. So I think we will continue to look, but I'm afraid, sir, don't hold your breath.
Yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for what you all do. Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, just go back to the start of this forum, talk about media. Southgate, I've attended so many matches at Kassam where we've had many silence or many applause. I have to say, I think that was signed for about a minute before. Whereas he read out the statement, the man's emotions were there, you could hear it in his voice. But thank you to the club, that was really well done.
Well, I thank the supporters as well, because the 15 minutes, the applause on 15 minutes, that was supported. It was agreed to, but the idea came from the support from the fan base, and the way that was responded to by the fans and the players, and the fact that the ball went out of play at the right time and the referee stopped the game, it was just beautiful.
I think it's also worth saying, and actually a huge kind of credit to the referee. I actually spoke to the referee after the game. I'm sure when the chief executive club singles out a referee for somebody to speak to, he's probably not expecting what I said to him, but I thanked him from the bottom of my heart from the club that he did what he did was exceptional. And I think it's worth saying, and I think it's worth repeating, what he said to me was that they had agreed before the game that if the ball went out of play during that minute, they were going to stop the game. And I actually think that shows a huge amount of respect to the club from the referee. There are referees who would not do that, but what a huge accolade for that referee to agree beforehand that they were going to do that. So, I don't know his name. I'm sure somebody would tell me his name, but I think on record I just want to show the club's appreciation for what he did there as well. It showed an enormous amount of respect to the club and to Amelia.
Absolutely should tell Sam Smith.
Yeah. And other people have behaved, Anthony, to remind me, Watford did something similar, which is very, very nice to see as well.
I was just wondering if the music that you play before the matches could be at a more volume than put it that way. It always sounds so very feeble.
It's extraordinary. I think the problem that you have is that we are not blessed with the best speakers in our stadium, so I'm afraid we do our best. And yes, I completely agree with you. I go to other stadia around the country and I'm genuinely deafened by not only the volume but also the quality. Rest assured, volume and quality of sound will be paramount in the new stadium. As regards this one, I totally sympathise with you, but it's a tricky one, I'm afraid.
It's also not helped by the open corners and the open ends, where they're not conducive to one of the reasons to have a bowl shape, and there's all sorts of things that goes into the design of that, including what materials that go into the roof in order to keep the sound into the stadium. And none of that is in this place.
Anybody else? If not, we can wrap up. We can get closing thoughts from our panel as well. If no one has anything else to ask. Tim, Grant, Anthony, any sort of closing lines from the three of you?
Well, I'll just like to say,
before you do that, sorry, David Webb was the referee.
David Webb. Thank you very much, David Webb.
It's quite a well-known name, Tim. You might have known.
I should have known. The club thanks you on record. Well, from me, I think look, it's a few months since we had the last fans forum. Obviously, the season has been a bit topsy-turvy, as seasons in the Championship are. It goes without. Well, it actually doesn't go without saying that none of this would be possible without the support of an exceptional group of fans, both home and away, and the actual round of applause to any football fan from me should go to you guys for supporting the club as you do, for taking time out of your incredibly busy diaries. I'd like to also, put on record, thanks to Janine and thanks to Paul for the sterling work they do in terms of sort of working with us on the fan advisory board, and also to Jem over there, who was enthusiastically and brilliantly taken on some of the work that's being done on OUITC. So Jem, thank you very much for that. I extend my welcome again to Amy, but also just thanks for being here and thanks for asking such brilliant questions. Actually, we never take these events lightly. We do prepare very well for them because we know we're going to get some pretty tough questions, but appreciate it. So thank you.
I was just going to make the same point as Tim actually about the fans. I've been lucky attend more games this season than other seasons, which is still quite a lot of games, but more so the number of away games I've managed this season, and the away support in particular is outstanding. And I've had chairman and car park attendants alike compliment me on the quality of our away support. It goes without saying we get it, and it's also, I mean, people like Mark Bloomfield has come in and experienced a number of clubs, is immediately taken aback by the quality and the passion of the support and what people perceive as being a relatively small club. We knew that was always the case at home, but I think the away support for this season has been quite outstanding. And so thank you all for that. They do travel. It's not only great for the team to have there, but the way that we conduct ourselves is actually testament to as a club as a whole, particularly when other people are noticing how well we behave, how much we support the team. And so that's all part of what we're trying to build, that people notice things like that.
Thank you, Tim. Grant, and I just, Grant, wish you a safe flight back as well.
Thank you. Monday night,
so safe journey back to you. Paul?
Yeah, just to wrap up, a massive thank you to Nathan, who yet again was Anthony, Grant, Tim, thank you for your time. From Mark, who's been here making sure we've got a live stream which actually had audible quality, which is a first for us. Finally, a thank you to you for coming. It's a bit of a pain having to go out and do these things sometimes, but what you have to say really does make a difference, whether it's to us OxVox, whether it's to FAB, or whether in this instance directly to the club. It makes a difference in how we go forward as a club, so it's really important. Finally from us, we always take a collection at these events. If you'd like to come to this side of the table, if you'd like to make a collection, we're collecting 50-50 between the Joe Beecham Foundation and the Killington Youth Clubhouse Appeal. So any money we receive tonight will go split between those two organisations. Finally, thank you very much again, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you.